This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, news from U.S. drug maker Pfizer that its experimental COVID-19 vaccine was more than 90% effective sparked a rally across financial markets today. Emerging market stocks jumped, with MSCI's Emerging Markets Equity Index climbing almost 2% on the day. That's its highest level since March 2018. Now, South Africa's main stock index was up over 2% today. Gains in the rand currency did help to lift the index for bank stocks, up about 8.9% to a 5-month high. We saw food and drug sellers up 7.3%, while general retailers were up 3%. However, gold stocks were a drag on the mining index as investors dumped safe havens. In Nigeria, the market heavyweights Dangote Cement and MTN Nigeria did help to push the oil share up almost 4% today. They climbed over 6% and 4% respectively. Now, also coming up on today's show, a huge step in the fight against the coronavirus as drug maker Pfizer says its experimental vaccine is 90% effective. And speakers and African heads of parliaments join in calls for debt cancellation in Africa. And back to the drawing board, the coronavirus pandemic leaves artists in Nigeria without income. Well, we begin with the news of a possible breakthrough in efforts to contain the coronavirus pandemic. American pharmaceutical company Pfizer says its experimental COVID-19 vaccine is more than 90% effective. Now, this is considered a major victory in the fight against a disease that has killed over 1 million people worldwide and slumped economies globally. Now, Pfizer and German partner BioNTech are the first drug makers to show successful data from a large-scale clinical trial.
The joint developers of the experimental vaccine say they have so far found no serious safety concerns. They expect to seek United States emergency use authorization later this month.
It is true that this type of medication has no approval yet, which is why we are carrying out this compatibility study with more than 40,000 test persons to find out if there are any intolerance, even a rare one. What we can prove with this study is that the vaccine is compatible and that side effects are mild and moderate, and that there are no severe side effects.
Pfizer said the interim analysis was conducted after 94 participants in the trial developed COVID-19. The company did not break down exactly how many of those who fell ill received the vaccine. 2 shots of the medicine were administered 3 weeks apart.
The way that the study works, it is that we randomized individuals in one-to-one, which means that 15,000 will receive the vaccine, 15,000 will receive a placebo, and then we are waiting to see if this population of 30,000 people will start getting disease. And the expectation, if the vaccine works, is that the people that are getting disease are coming from the group that didn't receive the vaccine. And those that receive the vaccine will have much less than those that they didn't in terms of disease.
The efficacy rate is well above the 50% effectiveness required by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for coronavirus vaccine. The data is yet to be peer-reviewed or published in a medical journal. Pfizer says it will do so once it has results from the entire trial.
I understand those that they are skeptical. And they are skeptical because there is so much politicized, the science right now. But many people will feel that for the sake of political gains or not gains, vaccines will be submitted or not submitted. And this is the worst situation that the society can be in.
Pfizer and BioNTech have a $1 billion contract with the U.S. government to deliver 100 million vaccine doses beginning next year. They have also reached supply agreements with the European Union, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Japan. This latest success provides hope that other vaccines in development against the coronavirus may also prove to be effective. Joy Kirukijuma, CGTN.
Well, let us shift focus now. Speakers and leaders from African parliaments want debt for African nations cancelled as economies hurt from the coronavirus pandemic. Drawn from 7 nations, the leaders have adopted an accountability pledge that will help ensure that freed up resources from debt relief are not misused. They say those will be invested in social, economic and human capital development. Now, the leaders have formed the Conference of Speakers and Heads of African Parliaments, with Nigeria expected to host the maiden conference in 2021. Well, let's find out more about the project. We're now joined by Professor Aaron Okwaye. He is Ghana's Speaker of Parliament. A pleasure to have you on the show with us today, sir. Now, let's start off with the issue of debt cancellation. Most of Africa's creditors, including China, which is considered Africa's single largest creditor, they seem to be saying yes to debt relief, yes to debt suspension, but not to complete debt forgiveness for the African continent. So what exactly is your strategy as you advocate for debt cancellation for Africa?
Thank you very much, and I'm glad you've invited me to take part in this program. It's been a great adventure as we face COVID in particular. Prior to the pandemic, the debt levels of numerous African countries were reaching unsustainable levels already. According to information from the IMF, debt-to-debt GDP ratios in African countries have increased from an average of 43% to 62% between 2013 to 2018. What kind of relief can you provide in the interim so as to restore? It's a matter of restoration of the process. Furthermore, 22 African countries have debt to GDP ratios of over 60%. The threshold set by the African Monetary Cooperation Program for prudent debt levels. Our strategy will be to speak frankly, because realistically, African countries are facing the following challenges that have been created also and particularly by COVID and the already cycle of poverty, misery, and disease in all the budgets that we make. We need support in order to move from year to year all in debt. For example, now we have increase in health expenses as a direct result of COVID. Shortfalls in petroleum.
Right.
Reduction in tax revenues. Reduction in hotel occupancy. In fact, the hotel and hospitality industry had virtually collapsed all around us. Unemployment from tax layouts, slowdown in foreign direct investments, reduction in trade volumes, decline in the international price of crude oil, exchange rate volatility and debt service difficulties, increase in the price of food and water. Now, you're in Ghana, for example, the president has called for a revival in self-help by way of our food production. And in order to even maximize our raw resources, we need a new world economic order. How do we balance processing and, for example, taking our food, vegetables, and also fruits, processing them in competition against foreign cheap products. No country ever in this world, got economic self-dependency from allowing competition. Right. There's always a need for self-protection. And this is the process in which we want debts to be relieved, so that we can also start all over again in that process.
Well, sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Okwaye, but how exactly do you plan to engage with global counterparts in terms of receiving that debt cancellation going forward?
Yes, it's a matter of negotiation. It's a matter of making people realize the depth of the problem. It's a matter of also people realizing one important thing, accountability. And that is why the legislature must come in strongly. Some time ago, we used to have diplomats throughout the world engaged in so many matters apart from economic diplomacy. Today, we are talking strongly about economic diplomacy. And in the same way, now we are talking about legislative diplomacy for the legislature to take a certain front stand so that trusting that Africa has increased its levels of checks and balances and accountability in the management of public funds, then it will encourage those who will liberate us from this quagmire. So it's a matter of liberating us, giving us a free and clean and new slate so that we can write our own story thereon. Because otherwise, it will become robbing Peter to pay Paul. And that is the issue of us now. We need a new paradigm, new paradigm which cannot take place under the present world arrangement economically. So we believe that if you talk about debt cancellation, then you are only canceling one so as to start another. But if you forgive, then the slate is clean for us to write a new story. This is the essence of the concept.
Right. Well, we actually have run out of time, but thank you so much for joining us, Professor, on the show today. Of course, that's Professor Aaron Okwaye. He's Ghana's Speaker of Parliament. Well, let's move on now and head to Tanzania. The country's national carrier, Air Tanzania, has resumed flights to Entebbe, Uganda, Lusaka, Zambia, and Harare in Zimbabwe. The move comes after the easing of coronavirus restrictions. Now, most nations had closed their airspaces to prevent the spread of the disease. Here's CGTN's Isaac Lukando with more.
Air Tanzania is taking to the skies again. Grounded because of international travel restrictions brought about by COVID-19, the company's CEO sees the resumption of flights as a sign of a positive future.
It's an indication that at least now the situation is changing in the market. We are able now to sell our product. I know it won't be easy. It won't just come overnight. It will take time. But to me, that is one of the issues which I've been waiting, that at least I can go back to the market, after this tragedy, COVID-19, and slowly we are starting to pick up.
Apart from its roots in Africa, Air Tanzania is also expanding to Mumbai in India and Guangzhou in China this year. The airline is particularly keen on exploiting the $3 billion trade volume between Tanzania and China.
So to us, we are looking as facilitators of the business between the two countries and between Tanzania and neighboring countries to enable them connected to the Chinese market. So to us, it's very important when we are talking of our economies, when we are talking of our businesses, when we are talking of our people who are doing business between Tanzania and China.
Like many other airlines, Air Tanzania was hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. With international travel restricted, the airline says its local operations were reduced to a mere 20%. According to the International Air Transport Association, IATA, the impact of COVID-19 on the airline industry in Africa may cause a loss of 3.5 million out of 6.2 million aviation-related jobs on the continent. Getting airlines back in the air will not only help save millions of livelihoods, but also give economies on the continent a much-needed boost. As a long-term strategy, the airline plans to expand its fleet from its current 8 to between 16 and 18 by the year 2025. This includes entering into the air freight market.
We haven't been where in many places, even in Africa, even in the region. So ideally, we look at it as opportunities from what we have now. We see there are more and more to do, and this can be achieved through expansion of our network. The opportunity there, we have our proof, and that's why we are expanding our fleet.
The airline says the resumption of flights will help offset the losses it incurred due to COVID-19, giving them a chance to establish themselves as a force in regional and international aviation. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Well, let's now take a look at our corporate headlines today. Ethiopian Airlines expects to submit a proposal in its plans to help manage South African Airways this week. Chief Executive Officer Tewolde Gebre-Mariam is quoted by Bloomberg saying that a detailed discussion will follow if South African Airways accepts its proposal. Now, South Africa's government approved a $686 million bailout last month in order to help revive the national carrier. Meanwhile, Kenya's Safaricom has reported a 6% drop in net profit for the 6 months ending in September. The company returned $309 million. Most of its revenue streams declined as the company suffered the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mobile data revenue, however, increased by 14.1%. And Akili from Tunisia has won this year's Orange Africa and Middle East Social Entrepreneur Prize. The startup developed a telephone hotline which offers psychological assistance covering the whole of North Africa. It is available 7 days a week and facilitates contact with qualified psychologists without having to make an appointment. Other winners are Teleman from Mali, an on-demand motorbike taxi service in Bamako, and WeGlow from Liberia that offers an online learning solution specific to the Liberian education system. And Norwegian Air is facing a battle for survival after the country's government declared that it will not provide additional financing support for the cash-strapped carrier. The airline disclosed in August that it will run out of cash in the first quarter of 2021 unless it could secure fresh funds. Chief Executive Jacob Schramm says he will not rule out any potential outcomes of bankruptcy. And that is a look at our corporate headlines. Well, we are heading into a short break now, still coming up on the show. Bad debt strangles banks in South Africa. And Egypt surpasses Spain and South Africa to become the world's largest exporter of oranges by volume.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, Kakuma town and refugee camp in northwest of Kenya has for 25 years hosted some of the 20 million people who have been displaced in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, despite the constant outflows and inflows of people into the camp, it is now home to a fast-growing, vibrant, though informal market. The International Finance Corporation recently conducted an on-the-ground study of the camp to better understand the dynamics of its market. Now, the study has now birthed the Kakuma Kalobei Challenge Fund. It is a partnership with the Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund, the Turkana County government, and the UNHCR. The $25 million five-year program is designed to support private sector investment and to unlock the economic potential of refugees. Well, let's find out more about the project from Luba Shara. She's a Senior Operations Officer at the IFC. Great to have you on the show with us, Luba. Now, what many don't know out there is that refugee camps such as Kakuma, they're growing formal market economies with a lot of consumer power. So what kinds of private businesses as well as social enterprises are you looking to attract with this new project?
Thank you for having me. You're so much right. Kakuma is an unusual place. It has a population of more than 250,000 people if you combine the refugee camp and Kakuma town. And it's a vibrant but informal economy. IFC is an investment development institution. We know the private sector well. The businesses we would like to attract are more formal and larger businesses, for example, the pharmacies, the agricultural production, energy suppliers, and so on. The businesses that have the commercial potential to come to Kakuma and start hiring people there, including host community and refugees.
Now, of course, as you just mentioned, it also hopes to develop the local community-owned businesses in the area. But how much funds will we see flowing into this project? And exactly how do you plan to structure this financing?
Thank you. Kakuma Kalobei Challenge Fund has different components, and the competition, which we start tomorrow, for private sector windows and for social enterprise sector windows will last for 6 weeks till December 22nd. And we encourage private companies and social enterprises to apply. So the half of the project fund will go to that competition. In addition, it's super important for businesses to understand how to operate in Kakuma refugee hosting areas. That's why we unite forces with Turkana County government of Northern Kenya and UNHCR on launching a business center, a one-stop shop where businesses can come and the rules of engagement on how to pay taxes, how to get business permits will be clarified. So that's also one of our key objectives for this program.
Now, what makes this project quite interesting, at least for me, is that it stemmed from a consumer and market study done by the IFC in Kakuma. It was titled Kakuma as a Marketplace. Very interesting because it basically looks at the camp through the lens of a private firm looking to enter a new market, which is not something that you see often when it comes to refugee camps. Give us a sense of what you guys saw that inspired this project.
We visited camp the first time back in 2016 by invitation from UNHCR. We didn't know what to expect. We are, as I've said, the financial development institution, but typically we work with more stable, more registered, larger firms. We never worked with in refugee hosting areas before 4 years ago. So we decided to try. What we saw is this highly urbanized area of more than 250,000 people with more than 2,000 shops, very vibrant. So we decided to find out and to look at this area, not as humanitarian agencies or NGOs look at refugee hosting areas, but as the private firm entering the area from the private firm lens and perspective. And that's what we found, and that's we estimated that Kakuma town and camp together as one market has a potential consumer market of $56 million per year. It's not huge as compared to other areas, but it's still substantial. And I think it was done the first time, the estimation of the market size. And that's what we are explaining to our own clients, but also potential businesses, which we encourage to come to Kakuma. Come see, it's a big urban area, underserved. There is a lot of potential to business in Kakuma.
Well, it's certainly a refreshing approach to refugee camps. Many thanks for your insights, Luba. That's Luba Shara. She's a senior operations officer at the IFC. Well, let's move on now to South Africa. The banking sector in the country is starting to take a strain. Many of its financial institutions helped consumers struggling with COVID-19 and the lockdown with payment holidays as well as relief agreements. However, thousands of people lost their jobs and more are set to be retrenched. Now, of course, bad debts are now rising again as consumers struggle to pay back, and that is putting pressure on the country's banking sector. Here's Sumitra Naidu reporting.
Microlender African Bank has become the latest in South Africa to announce planned retrenchments over a steep reduction in sales as a result of COVID-19. It is anticipated that 1,200 employees of the current 3,728 total will be affected.
We've seen the losses that's been reported by banks already, and that's a very big concern. Everything indicates that we are going to see a lot more of these job losses in the banking sector, because if you think about it, the loans are the assets of the banks. And that's the way they make money, is with the payments of these loans. So if the people are stopping to make these payments, they're not getting the income.
The planned retrenchments at African Bank come on the back of rising unpaid debt by consumers. The impact of payment holidays are likely to increase job losses.
The payment holidays run out, first of all. Secondly, the help from government has stopped, and people are realizing now that they have to look after themselves. And unfortunately, because of the fact that a lot of people lost their income or part of their income, they have now fallen behind with their payments towards their credit providers. And these credit providers has now started with hard collection and aggressive collection.
But it hasn't all been about COVID-19. Job losses in the banking sector has been ongoing for a few years now as companies look to advance technologically. Standard Bank last year cut over 2,400 staff as it closed branches for more digital models.
If really you are saying that now automation really is taking the people's job, the challenge becomes that to say, what is it that you've done as the employer to make sure that we save jobs? People will have to be skilled, people will have to be upskilled, and maybe at some stage we have to consider outskilling people and give the people a second chance career. So, but up to date, there's no bank that has ever came to us and say to the union, this is what we understand to be the future world of work.
According to the Banking Association of South Africa, the fiscal crisis over the country's widening deficit and sovereign debt is expected to contribute to a banking and financial crisis, especially since banks are facing more and more demands to support sometimes unsustainable government recovery initiatives. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, Egypt's orange production is undergoing a boom in desert regions. Industry data shows that Egypt has become the world's largest exporter of oranges by volume, surpassing its rivals Spain and South Africa, though the two nations still generate much more revenue from their orange exports. From Cairo, here's Yasser Hakim with the rest of the details.
Egypt exported almost 1.8 million tons of oranges in 2019, a 13% increase year-on-year, scraping to first position ahead of Spain, according to the International Trade Center, which is a joint agency of the World Trade Organization. One reason for the jump in exports is the large number of reclaimed land in the vast desert areas. This led to a 44% increase in production in the last decade. Another factor is the currency rate, which makes Egypt prices competitive. But orange exporter Hisham El-Nagar says quality is a major factor too.
We concentrated on improving the quality for all markets, but especially in the larger China and the EU. If you look at China, they require much higher quality than other countries. You also have to learn that different Chinese cities have different qualities and tastes, so you have to adapt to the need of each city, and we have worked diligently on this back home with updated technology and quality control. This approach has raised demand for our product.
Egypt is the highest producer in citrus exports. However, it ranks third in earnings with 660 million worth of exports in 2019.
Spain exports its oranges in small 1 and 2 kilogram packaging called consumer packaging, while we sell in at least 10 kilogram bags for wholesalers. The way the Spanish oranges are packaged is more expensive and allows the product to reach the retailer faster. Therefore, its value is higher, hence the price and revenue is higher.
The outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic has, however, hit Egypt orange exports this year, leading to a drop of 17% so far. But prospects for the sector look promising. According to local officials, countries such as China and the Arab Gulf nations have placed orders of double amounts next year. Japan has also lifted its embargo on Egyptian agricultural goods and is planning to import Egyptian oranges in 2021. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
You are watching Global Business Africa. We're going to take a quick break now, but still coming up on the show. The European Union to impose tariffs on up to $4 billion worth of U.S. goods. And cross-cultural communication and business cooperation at the ChinaAfrica Idea Lab.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Just about hour, let's recap today's top headlines. Now, Tuesday marked the 6th day since Ethiopia's army began its offensive against the Tigray Regional Force. Experts have voiced concern about the military operation, but Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is reassuring the world that his country will not descend into chaos. And the United Nations has initiated talks on Libya's future in Tunisia. The process is aimed at drawing a roadmap to national elections to end nearly a decade of chaos and bloodshed. Now, acting UN Libya envoy Stephanie Williams says that this is the best opportunity in 6 years to restore peace to the North African nation. Meanwhile, Nigerian health authorities say an outbreak of yellow fever in the country has claimed more than 50 lives in the past 2 months. This is amid the ongoing efforts by the government to curb the spread of the global coronavirus pandemic. And finally, local officials in Cameroon have arrested dozens to curb the rising insecurity. Gang violence has been on the rise in the economic capital of Douala. And that is a recap of today's top headlines. Well, let's get you some international news now. The European Union is set to impose tariffs and other penalties on up to $4 billion worth of U.S. goods and services. This is attributed to the alleged illegal American support for plane manufacturer Boeing. Now, this comes a year after the World Trade Organization authorized the United States to slap penalties on EU goods worth up to $7.5 billion.
On the external side, we will discuss trade relations with the US. We have a full to-do list on our transatlantic agenda, and we will look forward to work with the US administration to deal with our trade challenges, including Airbus Boeing. The President-elect Biden has stated on several occasions that he is a strong supporter of international alliances, of the multilateral system, and of the improving ties with the EU. So our priority will be a positive and forward-looking agenda, focusing on our bilateral agenda, WTO reform, and trade and climate change. In relation to China, negotiations on the comprehensive agreement on the investment are on advanced stage, and we maintain the objective to conclude the negotiations by the end of the year. However, the remaining issues are difficult and will require China to move significantly, so for us it's substance over deadlines.
Well, let's head over to Brexit. British leaders now say there is goodwill on both sides to progress towards a trade deal as a new round of talks with the European Union kicks off in London. The United Kingdom left the European Union in January, but the sides are still trying to clinch a deal before the transition period ends on December 31st. Now, the talks have broken down previously over state aid rules as well as fisheries, which is a sector laden with symbolism for Brexit supporters in the UK. Britain says it will be open to a compromise on fishing, which alone contributed to 0.03% of British economic output in 2019. However, many Brexit supporters see it as a symbol of the regained sovereignty they say leaving the EU should bring them. Meanwhile, in the U.S., presidential election results have solicited reactions around the world. Germany's economy minister, Peter Altmaier, says Joe Biden's victory indicates hope in the new American administration for a return to multilateralism and international trade. He also adds that there is also a need to return to an active transatlantic trade agenda as quickly as possible and step by step.
Es gibt große Erwartungen, es gibt die Hoffnung.
There are big expectations and there is hope that the US presidential elections are tied to a return to multilateral approaches in international trade and that it will be possible to overcome conflicts of the past. We want to return to an active transatlantic trade agenda as quickly as possible and step by step. For us, this includes the clarification of tariffs for steel and aluminium. Today, the EU Commission will inform us on the current situation of protective measures against steel imports which have existed in the EU since 2018.
And moving on now, the first flight which is ferrying Israeli tourists to the United Arab Emirates has landed in Dubai, indicating a normalcy between relations in the two nations. The Fly Dubai flight landed at Dubai International Airport, bringing the tourists to the skyscraper-studded city after a nearly 3-hour trip. Now, the flight saw Jewish Israelis and a number of Arab Israelis on board. The arrival of tourists comes as Dubai works to revive its vital tourism industry amidst the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. The UAE and Israel have also agreed to launch regular commercial flights between their nations soon, while other recent flights have carried business and governmental delegations.
There is no doubt that the normalization between Israel and the UAE will bring good things and will benefit the Arabs inside Israel. There is no doubt about that. We are supportive of this deal, and we are here today to normalize the normalization in reality.
This have changed my view on the Arabs, actually, because in my country, unfortunately, since I was born, always been like everybody fighting each other. And suddenly I'm coming to Dubai, I'm talking to the government in Abu Dhabi for a few weeks already, I have Zoom meetings with them. They're talking to me very nicely. I'm not used to it. I mean, there is human beings in both sides. Everybody, leave the political things aside. We are brothers.
Now, many believe the world has drifted towards greater levels of unilateralism and protectionism. In response, China is emphasizing a need for technological self-reliance. In Shanghai's Pudong New area, the local government is providing more support to chip companies in order to help them develop their products. Here's CGTN's Zhao Yunfei with more.
The chip industry in China is a hot market right now. Competition is heating up with increasing potential. InventChip is developing silicon carbide devices using special material to save energy. It's all aimed at high-tech industries, from a 5G base station to electric vehicles.
The driving distance can be at least 5 to 10% longer, or in other words, we can use maybe 5 to 10% of smaller batteries.
Compared with the US and European countries that have plenty of mature chip sectors, Zhang Yongxi says the industry in China is in its infancy, so challenges and opportunities lie ahead. Zhang has settled in his office in Shanghai's Pudong New area to make sure the startup is connected with a world-class industrial environment. The Lingang New area gathers China's top integrated circuit companies. It's part of Shanghai's ambitious goal to build a world chip hub in the East by speeding up the development of infrastructure.
China's integrated circuit industry has a high reliance on devices and materials from abroad. In order to compete with international tech giants, we need to expand the variety of our products. We're supporting our companies with gaining more technologies.
For InventChip, Zhang says they're benefiting from Lingang's provincial policies. The subsidies they receive, as much as 10% from some projects, allow them to bravely conduct innovative projects.
We hope that in future, this area will really become a very competitive Silicon Valley-like of high-tech area.
Zhang says with more companies joining the bloc, supply chains will be improved, and small and giant enterprises can both play their part in the system. Zhao Yunfei, CGTN, Shanghai.
And a week of cultural cooperation and exchange between China and Africa has kicked off in the east of China. The event in Jinhua City, Zhejiang Province, includes an economic and trade forum. Here's Shang Jianglong with more.
Since 2018, China's eastern city of Jinhua has held the China-Africa Cultural Cooperation and Exchange Week. Officials from over 20 African countries are attending this year. In addition to cross-cultural communication, the event also serves as a platform for promoting business cooperation between China and Africa, attracting more than 200 enterprises from home and abroad. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, a majority of events have been moved online this year. The forum has invited African ambassadors to China to take part in live stream shopping to sell popular goods from their home countries. Around 1 million people are expected to join the online event.
Introducing e-commerce will be a
great opportunity for Africans because e-commerce will help them to connect directly with the Chinese companies and also overseas markets. Therefore, African will be able to participate in global trade.
Seated in the middle in the eastern China's Zhejiang province, Jinhua is known for its big international market and foreign trade cooperation.
When you have an event like this, it gives you opportunity to work closely together and better develop trade policies. It gives opportunity for networking. Then also, this kind of event also gives African countries opportunities to showcase their culture, their products, and also be able to sell.
Due to the Belt and Road Initiative, cooperation between Jinhua and Africa has been strengthened. And despite the pandemic disrupting global trade, during the first 9 months of this year, the import and export volume between Jinhua and Africa reached almost $8.7 billion, about 34% of the total in Zhejiang province. Looking back to last year, 5,200 African entrepreneurs were doing business in Jinhua. Jinhua's investments in Africa reached more than $37 million, with 49 enterprises on the continent.
Africa is the continent with the most potential in the world, providing great opportunities. With the deepening of the Belt and Road Initiative, I think China's private companies in Africa can do business there and provide help, making it a win-win cooperation.
Over the past 2 decades, China-Africa cooperation has reached impressive achievements. In 2019, direct Chinese investment stock in Africa topped over $49 billion, up nearly 100-fold from 2000. And the future still holds opportunities for many companies.
Many private companies have expressed a desire to increase their investment in Africa. In addition to the pharmaceutical and medical industries, we plan to establish more overseas industrial zones, so our cooperation with Africa will be stronger and bring more opportunities for joint development.
China and Africa have grown more united, and the relations have strengthened through fighting the pandemic together. By late October, China had delivered medical aid to more than 50 African countries and sent nearly 160 medical teams there. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. The two sides will continue to strengthen cooperation in health, economic revitalization, and cultural communication. 尚江龙 CGTN 金华 Zhejiang Province.
And on that note, let's take a look at commodity markets today. Oil prices climbing almost 9%, with Brent surpassing $40 a barrel. That was after Joe Biden clinched the U.S. presidency and boosted risk appetite in the oil market. Now, traders say the outcome of that election offset the worry about the effect on demand from the worsening coronavirus pandemic. Meanwhile, gold prices beating a sharp retreat today, sliding over 3%, and that was after Pfizer's announcement. Traders say that dented gold's safe haven appeal today. Well, let's take a quick break now. Still to come on the show. The coronavirus pandemic sends Nigerian artists back to the drawing board as revenue streams dwindle.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
I've been Djibouti, Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, Tunisia is taking part in the third edition of the China International Import Expo. 6 companies from the North African nation are exhibiting products from the food and agricultural sector. Tunisian enterprises are aiming to increase their exports to China. Well, here's CGTN's Adnan Shaushi with the details.
The Tunisian pavilion covers an area of 54 square meters and showcases a range of products including olive oil, pasta, cake and chips. The pavilion is managed by the Tunisian Export Promotion Center (CPEX) with the assistance of the Tunisian Embassy in Beijing.
The Tunisian participation comes from our conviction that China is one of the most promising import and export markets in the world. The expo in China will open the door for our companies to boost exports to the Chinese market.
Nouha Loued is the marketing manager for the Tunisian olive oil company Rivière d'Or. Tunisia is among the world's top exporters of the golden liquid.
We are an olive oil company that was established in 1928. We export to more than 50 countries around the world, and we have a capacity of about 12,000 tons per year.
For this third edition of the China International Import Expo, some 400,000 visitors are expected during the 6 days of the fair.
We are very passionate about olive oil, and we went to China to search for new clients because we believe that China is a very promising market, and they become very aware of olive oil, of its health benefits, and that's why we're here, and we hope that we will be successful in this fair.
Representatives of Chinese companies and consumers will have the opportunity to meet around 2,600 global exhibitors from across the world. According to the Tunisian Embassy in Beijing, the China International Import Expo has dedicated more than 360,000 square meters to the trade of goods and services. The Export Promotion Center aims to increase the number of Tunisian participants in all international fairs in China. Adnan Shaushi, CGTN, Tunis.
Meanwhile, in Nigeria, the contemporary art scene has been severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has slammed the door on international auctions in the country, and that has halted the inflow of sales for artists. Now, it is especially difficult for art exhibitors whose majority clientele have been high-ranking Nigerians and diplomats. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reporting.
An art exhibition opens at this gallery in the Nigerian capital, Abuja. Enthusiasts keenly view the works on display. Contemporary art exhibitor teams up with science-inspired artists for an industry relaunch. The West African powerhouse has a surging number of talents whose works are exposed to the international art market. Oloriyemi is one of such talents. His unique arts are science-influenced, drawing inspiration from physics equations. He raked in an average $26,000 in 2019 alone.
There's a switch right now. The African contemporary art is what is moving right now in the world. The world is moving back to African arts, but now in the form of contemporary art, and it's gaining a lot of recognition. And I discovered that the physics equations and the theorems I found so out then were something that I can actually bring out more beauty and sense out of. So I began to make research. I read a lot. I went back to the physics equations and everything, and I decided to incorporate science generally into my art.
Though there's no official statistics as to the value of Nigerian art market, over $1 million was realized from 200 artworks auctioned in 2018. Meanwhile, contemporary art has been making waves in the international art market too. But like other businesses, the COVID-19 lockdown affected the sector.
So the coronavirus was very tough. We had to close because this is a public space, and we only recently reopened. But the effect has been really felt. But due to the suppression of social activities, we are getting a lot of traction because people are looking for events and things to do. So in a way, it gave us time to re-strategize and refocus our energies.
I'm very frequent here for art viewing, especially when new exhibitions come up.
So definitely, COVID-19 has really affected the art exhibitions, and as such, it has really affected us as we are not able to come out to view artworks since everywhere was on lockdown.
Nigeria has a growing middle class with a burgeoning appetite for purchasing contemporary art. Industry players outline the quality of work and social media platform as reasons for soaring collectors' demand for Nigerian arts. Despite setbacks caused by COVID-19, many here are positive that the sector will make a comeback. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Now, thousands of Kenyan workers have joined the informal sector, and that's after losing their formal sector jobs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, CGTN's Robert Nagila caught up with one such person who started a business to sustain his family.
When we first met Rickson Itonga back in April, the food and beverage manager of a leading international hotel was on paid leave as the establishment he worked for navigated the impact of COVID-19. But last month, he was informed his employment had been terminated, along with hundreds of others.
It was traumatizing.
Using his redundancy payment and skills acquired in the hotel industry, he set up a small eatery to sustain his family. He admits it wasn't easy breaking the news to his wife.
I came and shared with my wife. She was a bit stressed the first week. And then I told her, since we have some money to push us through, it is now us to keep in mind that the job is normal and we plan ourselves.
It's been a tough year for the job market in Kenya due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The unemployment rate doubled to 10.4% in the second quarter of this year compared to 5.2% last year. The father of three knows he is fortunate. Thousands of others who lost their jobs due to COVID-19 have yet to secure a regular source of income.
I'm here because now the situation forced me to be here now, fully. Now, we are not into saving much than to have something to put in our stomach.
Rickson says without his wife, picking himself up after losing his job would have been more challenging. For the moment, he's considering moving the family to a smaller apartment to cut costs, but has plans to expand the business and grow his income.
I'm praying to God that come January, everything to stabilize so that I can open a few restaurants.
His is a story of hope and resilience. But like many other small businesses, he would like more support from the government so that small businesses like his can thrive in these trying times. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
And before we leave you, a quick look at Africa's currencies today. South Africa's rand on track for its 7th day of gains. It firmed up as the election of Joe Biden as U.S. president did help to boost investor appetite for riskier assets. Now, the local currency built on recent gains, strengthening to an intraday best of 15.5 rand per dollar. That is its best level since March 5th. Meanwhile, Nigeria's naira getting a boost as BDCs or Bureau de Changes get another round of dollar supply from the central bank. It remained stable on the official window at around 385 to 386 naira per dollar. Well, today it also stood at around 462 per dollar on the parallel market. And that is it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the